Some movie chases and car scenes are sometimes too hard to narrow down into one category of style that it can make it at times difficult even to describe to others, that you just have to shake your head and wonder what the hell is going on and did I just see what I just saw. MFP presents 10 what the f*** vehicle moments on screen.
You finish first, or not at all. Death Race 2000.
Death Race 2000 is a 1975 Roger Corman low-budget and a one-of-a-kind film that only Corman's company could have possibly come up with back in the 70s. A coast-to-coast race set in a future where drivers are seen as national heroes and villains, as the sport known as Death Race is one of the highest praised in the US in this world, where the goal is to drive from state to state, running over as many people as one can in order to score points to win. Starring Kill Bill's David Carradine as champion racer Frankenstein, and a pre-Rocky Sylvester Stallone as Machine Gun Joe, the film highlights a number of custom cars which Carradine and Stallone did actually drive on the American roads for the film, along with Corman, as a number of the stunt drivers refused to, since they were not street legal and none of them wanted to lose their licenses. The vehicles in this film were heavily modified and were based on kit cars that existed at the time, that were created by automobile designer custom car builder Dick Dean, such as Frankenstein's Monster, that was a modified kit car Charlevette that was mounted on a VW chassis. Machine Gun Joe's Racer, that was originally inspired by the Manta Mirage, came with a 6-cylinder 2.7-litre Chevrolet Corvair engine with 140 to 180 horsepower output range in either the standard or the turbo-powered version at the end of its initial run in 1969. With several entertaining and creative death scenes of pedestrians, it is hard to pin down the best one, as they seem to be a favourite to different fans of the film depending on who is asked. One though is that being of a poor construction worker who is impaled and run over by Joe from the rear early on in the race, who is unaware of what is about to happen to him while operating a jackhammer in the middle of the street, and leads to a gushing of unrealistic fake blood that only the 70s cinema could have produced.
Like that, huh?
Crazy is the best way to describe the entire chase scene from the 1990 comedy cop film Short Time. Playing on the trope of the soon-to-be-retired cop story, the film focuses on surprisingly named at the time police officer Bert Simpson, who after taking as much care as possible to survive his last days on the force via extra precautions, discovers after a checkup gone wrong he is suffering from a rare disorder that will ultimately kill him. Due to his fear of a lack of financial support for his family after his death, Simpson discovers that if he is killed while still in active duty, his insurance will be enough to look after his family's future. What ensues is a dash to try and get himself killed before his retirement in a number of hilarious, be it failed attempts at some form of work-related fatality. After hearing of a chase in progress, Simpson leaves behind his partner and heads off in the then popular service vehicle, a crimson red 1984 Dodge Diplomat, which came with a standard 5.2-litre V8 engine with an optional 4-barrel carb for the police package with 165 horsepower and a top speed of 121 miles per hour. However, early in the chase, the car inexplicably switches to a Canadian 1982 Plymouth Caravelle as displayed on the front grille, and is used throughout the remainder of the scene. The chase eventually turns into one of pure insanity and fun, as Simpson finally makes a last-ditch effort by getting ahead of the criminals and side parking in front of their path as a sure way of getting himself killed. The chase comes to an abrupt end and in a spectacular crash, yet once again it seems as though Simpson can't seem to catch the break he is desperately looking for.
Can't you idiots do anything right?
Don't you know where we're going?
No, I don't, but Chitty does.
A car film that made its viewers question their logic, yet allowed for imagination to take them over. The almost cousin-like movie to James Bond, given the original book the script was adapted from was written by Ian Fleming, and the film produced by Cubby Broccoli captured the imagination of many and remains a family favourite to this day. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang was a 1968 musical whose plot revolved around a magical car created by a harebrained creator named Potts after saving the then ex-racer from demolishment. Though custom made for the movie, as there were said to be 6 created by the Allen Man Racing Workshop, the car used for the film originally gained its inspiration in the book from former race cars from the 1920s created by wealthy race driver and car designer Count Louis Borowski, who named his race cars Chitty Bang Bang based on a connection from the post-World War I Zeppelin and Aero 23-litre inline 6 engines which were used to power them. The creative for Film Chitty was powered by a 3-litre V6 Essex Ford engine with around 128 horsepower and said to have a top speed of a little over 100 miles per hour according to sources. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang showcases a number of amazing moments for the time, one of which was the car turning itself into an aquacraft. The biggest amazing moment for Chitty happens after a chase takes place to save their kidnapped grandfather, when the Potts family drive off the side of a cliff only for the theatre to cut to an intermission at that moment. Upon returning to their seats, the audience was treated to a moment where the box-shaped car sprouted wings and flew, leaving the Potts family truly scrumptious and the audience in amazement, thus creating a car and film loved by many for decades to come.
Oh, clever, Daddy! Yes, he certainly is.
A franchise that surprisingly grew stronger in popularity with each new installment after its fourth entry in the series, the Fast and the Furious films have always teetered on a razor's edge of reality and fantasy when it comes to its cars and stunts. It was in the 2015 installment of Furious 7 did we see perhaps one of the franchise's most ambitious of ideas, by having a then newly created 3.7 litre twin turbocharged Flux 6 780 horsepower $3.4 million Lykan Hypersport hypercar created by W Motors jump from one skyscraper to another and then another, all the while the film stars Vin Diesel and Paul Walker try to steal a flash drive from within. Setting the scene in the Towers of Dubai, it was not surprising that this stunt had to be filmed on set pieces in parking lots and studios, as the sheer logistics of this idea was beyond any realm of possibility. In order to achieve this, second unit director stunt coordinator Jack Gill and brother Andy were put in charge to create and film this stunt under the supervision of director James Wan, having stunt driver Steve Kelso drive off ramps, breaking through windows and into the sets. Obviously, to use the $3.4 million version of the car for the scene was not the smart choice, as several still pricey replicas were actually made by W Motors that were ultimately used and destroyed for the scene, having one drop from 60 feet in the air to replicate the climax of the stunt. Seemed like Leica finally succumbed to the actual laws of gravity.
Est-ce que vous pouvez me sauver la vie?
A priori, non.
A European favourite, along with an international fan following, the original French version of Taxi, written and produced by famed French director Luc Besson, became a surprise box office hit that would go on to spawn a number of sequels. It was in its 1998 first entry we followed the story of a reckless taxi driver named Daniel, who teams up with a less than capable police officer to take down a gang of German bank robbers. With a number of amazing chases that will need to be on other lists that could easily make this one, it is our introduction to this character and his ride that needs to get its mention first. Daniel drives a white 1996 Peugeot 406 that can transform from a sleeper to a street racer within less than a minute, which although looked to be modified to appear as a type of high-performance driver on the outside, actually had a stock standard 2.9 litre badged as 3 PSA V6 between 190 to 210 horsepower and a top speed of 140 miles per hour, which is quite impressive for a stock family sedan. The scene in which we are first introduced to the skills of this now famous taxi driver and his ride is when a fare jumps in and requests that his life depends on catching a flight that is departing in 25 minutes. Being handed over a large sum of francs to get the job done, the taxi driver transforms his mundane-looking white taxi into its spoiled look as he soon screeches off in an impressive display of speed and zigzagging his way through the city streets and highway traffic. Director Gerard Pires, who had been old friends with Besson, was chosen since Besson was already working on The Fifth Element, yet Pires had not directed a film before Taxi in nearly 15 years, but had ironically been directing car commercials for Peugeot. With the scene ending in a successful way in arriving at its destination in under 15 minutes, the taxi drives off and leaves its passenger in a worse for wear state, and the audience getting its first glimpse into what the popular original French franchise was to offer.
14 minutes 30.
I can't wait to see the look on the bastard's face.
After quote-unquote borrowing as suggested by the film's poster, his friend Cameron's father's 1961 Ferrari 250 GT California Spider that was actually a Medina replica built for the film, Ferris Bueller's Day Off tells the story of a teen who basically steals a car as an excuse to pick up his girlfriend, as all three friends are away from school and off on their own little adventure in the city of Chicago in this 1980s John Hughes classic. The original Ferrari that the replica was based on had a V12 3-litre engine with 240 brake horsepower and now sells at auction for around $18 million, as only a handful of these treasures still exist today, with just over 50 being made in the early 1960s. The replicas made for the film that were said to number at around 3, built by Medina Design and Development, were reported to have engines that varied from 289, 302 and 427 cubic inch V8s according to different sources. After poor judgment leaving the vehicle at a city garage where it was taken for another stolen joyride, adding on an additional number of miles, now adding up 175 extra to the odometer, the panic began to bring the miles back by reverse gearing and placing the car on a mount in its garage. After failing the attempt and having a personal meltdown, the character of Cameron beats on the Ferrari out of anger against his father and his love for it. Not knowing what he was causing, by the end of his rampage, the Ferrari falls off its jack and reverses out of its glass-surrounded location down from a high level, landing into a ravine below. ultimately destroying the car and leaving audiences and car lovers shocked to the point of thinking and complaining that producers wastefully destroyed a classic car for a film, which luckily in the end they did.
Holy shit!
Okay. Show me.
With Stephen King's novel telling the story of a killer-possessed car going on a murderous rampage, it would be hard to imagine there would not be at least one or two shocking moments in this 1983 film adaptation of Christine. One of the highlights in the John Carpenter-directed movie car classic is the moment we, the audience, and the character of Arnie Cunningham see for the first time the full extent of the seen-on-screen version engine, unlike some of the others used in production. 5.7-litre 305 horsepower Chrysler V8 1958 Plymouth Belvedere Fury, as she self-repairs after a brutal demolishment at the hands of bullies set out to destroy her for payback against Arnie. To sell the scene, John Carpenter wanted actor Keith Gordon to play the moment as though an erotic performance was about to take place between two lovers, and has the actor watch in pleasure at the sight of his dream machine repair herself. With the music score of saxophone blasting Harlem Nocturne by the Viscounts played over the scene, we see an all-in-camera visual effect as Christine repairs herself. This was achieved at the suggestion from special effects supervisor Roy Obergast, who suggested hydraulics and reverse camera speed work used to create the effect to see the cherry red V8 repair herself as her lights shine brightly onto the character of Arnie's face as he watches on gleefully as his beloved returns to a perfect former self.
Can you swim?
With The Spy Who Loved Me being the 1977 entry of the James Bond franchise that within its over 50 years of history has more than its fair share of insane car moments, be it a specially made anti-theft device in For Your Eyes Only, a skiing rocket-propelled ice chase in The Living Daylights, or even as an invisible car in Die Another Day. Perhaps one of the most incredible moments in the franchise when it comes to its cars and their gadgets is the 1976 Lotus Esprit S1 from The Spy Who Loved Me that, after an impressive car chase against a helicopter, drives off an Italian pier and into the Mediterranean waters and turns itself into a submarine-like vehicle. With a 2-litre Lotus 907 4-cylinder engine at 160 brake horsepower output range and 138 mph top speed, this was the introduction of a new James Bond car for a new James Bond in its then 10th entry starring Roger Moore. Provided by Q Branch of MI6 for 007, the Lotus was the replacement Bond vehicle for at least 2 films, standing in for the 1963 Aston Martin DB5 that had been made famous by Sean Connery in Goldfinger and Thunderball. Being given the title Wet Nelly in its submarine form, constructed by Perry Oceanographic Incorporated as an homage to Little Nelly, the autogyro flown by Connery in You Only Live Twice, the now submerged Lotus came equipped with surface-to-air missiles, along with a black dye slick device, mines, torpedoes, to help with the escape of 007 to go off and emerge in perfect form on an Italian beach. With a film wall-to-wall with moments that break so many rules of common sense and physics, it is almost impossible to narrow down just one moment of over-the-top madness in the 1980 comedy classic The Blues Brothers. However, during the midst of what can be described as an insane chase scene through the streets of Chicago, Blues brothers Elwood and Jake, driving their 1974 Dodge Monaco with a 440 V8 ex-police vehicle, are able to evade being captured by what appears to be the entire Chicago and state police force in pursuit. Eventually they are soon also chased by a group of neo-Nazis they encountered earlier, with the lead driving a red 1977 Ford Pinto aiming to chase and shoot the brothers down. When the chase makes its way to a bridge that is still under construction, the Blues brothers are able to somehow by magic reverse their car into a backflip and over the Pinto and land on all 4 wheels now facing the opposite direction, while the Ford flies off the edge into what appears to be an almost height of infinity as we see it fly through the sky before descending from an incredible height, eventually landing and crashing through the asphalt, leaving behind a great big pothole in its wake. In order to achieve this, director John Landis had the Pinto attached to a helicopter, raising and dropping it from an altitude of 1,200 feet, which required the Pinto to gain a special airworthiness certificate from the FAA to confirm that the Ford was not somehow going to fly, be it under its own power or through aerodynamic gliding, as it was dropped over an area in the city with no buildings, used to store salt for winter snow usage on the Chicago roads. In a film sprinkled with a number of jaw-dropping moments, this was one where just the idea alone of dropping a car from such height makes it a great inclusion on any list of incredible film moments in cinema history.
When you're the best, you do things with style.
Who better to top a list of WTF moments on screen if not the man himself, Chuck Norris, in the 1983 action classic Lone Wolf McQuade? Although not the most technically complicated, albeit fantastical moment on this list, part of the appeal for this scene for fans comes from how ridiculous yet overly fun it plays out. Already established as containing a special type of supercharger early on in the film, the lead character of Texas Ranger J.J. McQuade is shown driving a second-generation 1982-83 white mightied-up Dodge Ram Charger. Available with limited engine options, the engine used in this film may have likely been the Chrysler LA 360 V8 with 185 horsepower. Towards the end of the second act of the film, we see after a failed police raid and after putting up a hell of a typical Chuck Norris fight, McQuade is soon overpowered and beaten up further by the film's antagonist, played by David Carradine. In a form of torture and slow death, Carradine orders the burial of McQuade in his truck in the desert. After most of the criminals escape and a few are left behind to clean up and finish the job, we see McQuade come to and literally shower himself and take a swig of Pearl beer. To further add to the situation, according to Norris in an interview with Black Belt magazine, real beer was used for the scene, which actually led to Norris burning his eyes during filming. McQuade then turns on the ignition and activates the Wien Street Charger that has the ability to switch on and off, much like in the fictitious manner as was the case in the Mad Max films that came out a few years earlier. In a marvelous display of acting by Chuck Norris, who plays the scene straight as can be as he kicks from the guts, we see the Ram Charger begin to make its way out of the ground slowly at first, with sirens blazing, before it fully launches itself, as though the concept of physics and gravitation has no meaning, and ramming over a goon before Chuck kicks open his driver's side door and shoots another one before collapsing out of it. The stunt was achieved by digging a ditch in the ground and laying traction tracks and placing a thin layer covered with dirt towards the exit and having the truck out of shot drive in one end and then exit as fast as it could out the other. The stunt driver was unable to see what was happening due to the dirt and feared for the other stuntman he was supposed to hit, as the stunt was done blind but was executed without any injuries. The scene was so enjoyed by famed film critic Roger Ebert, citing this scene as his standout moment of the whole film, and compared the police station crash scene in the 1984 Arnold Schwarzenegger movie The Terminator to it. McQuade soon comes to, bringing an end to a truly fun moment in an action vehicle scene that still works to entertain people in one way or another even to this day.
Give me a beer, kid.
If you like this video, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in order to help this channel grow and to bring you more content like this one, as your support is what keeps this channel going.